When two people are afraid to love each other but already do, the very first sign reveals itself through restraint, and this restraint is subtle, quiet, and often misunderstood. It doesn't look dramatic. There are no explosive arguments or obvious rejection. Instead, it appears as control, emotional control, behavioral control, a constant inner negotiation where the heart wants to move forward but the mind tightens the reins. This is where dark psychology and stoic psychology intersect, because restraint is not absence of emotion, it is emotion under surveillance. You feel it in the pauses, the delayed replies that are carefully timed, not because you are busy, but because responding too fast would expose how much you care. You feel it in the words chosen, edited, softened, or sometimes visibly held back. You both know there is more that could be said, yet neither dares to say it fully. This is not emotional immaturity. In fact, it often happens between emotionally intelligent people who have been hurt before, people who know exactly what love can cost. Stoic philosophy teaches that humans seek to avoid suffering more than they seek pleasure. In love, this truth becomes dangerous. When attraction is strong, when connection feels real, the risk increases. The stronger the feeling, the greater the potential loss. So the mind intervenes. It whispers, "Be careful, don't reveal too much. Stay composed," resembling strength but rooted in fear. From a female psychology perspective, restraint is often a defense mechanism built from experience. When a woman senses deep emotional attachment forming, especially with someone who has the power to affect her sense of safety or self-worth, she may instinctively slow down. Not because she doubts the connection, but because she respects its power. Emotional vulnerability is not given freely, it is tested. She may limit affection, reduce emotional expression, or keep conversations on safer ground, all while feeling deeply attached inside. For the man, restraint often shows up as emotional minimalism. He may feel the urge to protect his image of control, to not appear needy, to not be the one who falls first. Stoicism, when misunderstood, turns into emotional suppression instead of emotional mastery. He tells himself that discipline means silence, that strength means withholding, and that revealing desire makes him weak. But real stoic strength is not suppression, it is conscious choice. And here, the choice is driven by fear. Both sides are doing the same thing, managing exposure. Each is afraid that showing too much will shift the power dynamic. Dark psychology reveals something uncomfortable here. Love becomes a negotiation of control when fear enters the room. Whoever reveals more first risks being emotionally dominated. So both hold back, not realizing that mutual restraint slowly creates emotional starvation. This is why the energy feels intense but stagnant. The connection is alive, yet nothing moves forward. The attraction grows stronger precisely because it is restrained. Scarcity increases desire. Silence creates obsession. The mind fills gaps with imagination. Every small interaction becomes loaded with meaning. A simple message feels heavy. A glance feels electric, because what is not expressed accumulates pressure. Restraint also manifests as over-rationalization. You both find logical reasons to slow down. It's not the right time. We should be realistic. Let's not rush. These statements sound mature, even wise, but beneath them is avoidance. Stoicism warns against confusing rationality with fear-based thinking. True rational thought seeks clarity, not safety at the cost of truth. Another layer of restraint is emotional mirroring. You subconsciously match each other's level of expression. If one pulls back slightly, the other immediately does the same. This is a psychological dance of self-protection. No one wants to be the only one exposed. Female psychology shows that women are especially sensitive to emotional imbalance. If she feels she is giving more than she receives, she will pull back to restore equilibrium, even if it hurts her. What makes this sign powerful is that restraint often masquerades as self-respect. And sometimes it is. But when both people feel the same pull and still refuse to step forward, restraint becomes a cage. Dark psychology calls this mutual inhibition, two minds blocking each other out of fear while desire grows unchecked underneath. Inside, there is frustration, not anger but tension. You replay conversations in your head. You imagine what you didn't say, you wonder if the other person feels the same. You test boundaries indirectly through jokes, through subtle compliments, through silence itself. Silence becomes a tool. If they miss me, they care. If they reach out, it's safe. But when both think this way, nothing happens. Stoic wisdom teaches that avoidance of pain often creates more pain. By trying to protect yourself from rejection, you prolong uncertainty. And uncertainty is more corrosive than truth. The restrained heart is never at peace. It is always alert, always calculating, always guarding. Love cannot breathe in this state. The most dangerous part is that restraint can eventually be misinterpreted as lack of interest. One or both may start doubting the connection. Ego steps in. Pride replaces curiosity. Dark psychology explains that when desire is denied expression for too long, it can flip into resentment or emotional detachment as a self-preservation strategy. Not because love died, but because it was never allowed to live openly. This sign exists precisely because the feelings are real. If there were no emotional investment, there would be no need for restraint. Indifference does not require control. Fear does, and fear only appears when something valuable is at stake. So when you notice this careful distance, this emotional economy, this constant holding back on both sides, understand what it truly means. Two people standing at the edge of something meaningful, both disciplined, both intelligent, both wounded, and both afraid to step forward first. Not because they don't feel enough, but because they feel too much. The second sign reveals itself through mirrored behavior, and this is where psychology becomes almost mechanical, as if two minds are linked by an invisible algorithm of self-protection. When one retreats, the other follows. When one grows quiet, the other responds with silence. This is not coincidence. It is unconscious synchronization driven by fear, pride, and the need to maintain emotional balance. Two people already in love, but afraid to admit it, begin to treat each other like reflections instead of individuals. Mirrored behavior begins the moment vulnerability feels possible. One person senses the emotional depth forming and instinctively tests the waters by pulling back slightly. This retreat is rarely dramatic. It may be fewer messages, a colder tone, a delayed response. The purpose is not to disconnect but to observe, to see whether the other notices, to see whether the bond holds without constant reinforcement. Female psychology shows that this testing phase is crucial for emotional safety. Before surrendering fully, the subconscious asks, will they chase or will they disappear? The response determines everything. If the other person mirrors the withdrawal, it creates the illusion of balance. No one appears more invested. No one risks humiliation. Pride remains intact. But what is actually happening beneath the surface is far more complex. Both are watching each other closely, both are hyper-aware, both feel the shift immediately. And both choose silence over honesty. Stoic psychology explains this as fear of asymmetry. Humans instinctively avoid being in a position of emotional disadvantage. To care more feels like losing control. In relationships where love is already present but unspoken, control becomes a currency. Each interaction is measured. Each response is calculated, not to manipulate but to survive emotionally. Dark psychology takes this further. Mirroring is a defensive reflex that creates emotional deadlock. It is a standoff where neither wants to lower their weapon first. The irony is brutal, both want closeness, yet both enforce distance. And because humans are pattern-seeking, this behavior quickly becomes habitual. Withdrawal is met with withdrawal, distance becomes normal. The bond survives, but it starves. From the female psychological perspective, mirrored behavior is deeply tied to self-worth. A woman who senses emotional inconsistency will instinctively regulate her output. If affection is not matched, she reduces it. Not to punish, but to protect. She may tell herself she is being rational, calm, detached, but internally the emotional attachment remains active, quietly consuming energy. For the man, mirroring often comes from pride. He interprets withdrawal as loss of interest or a test of dominance. Instead of expressing concern, he responds with equal distance. Stoicism, when misunderstood, reinforces this reaction. He believes strength means not reacting emotionally. But this is not Stoic mastery, it is emotional avoidance disguised as discipline. What makes mirrored behavior so destructive is that it removes leadership from the connection. No one takes responsibility for direction. Both wait, both react, both believe the other holds the power. In reality, fear holds the power, and fear is a terrible leader. This pattern also amplifies misunderstanding. Silence is interpreted as indifference. Distance is misread as rejection. Small behaviors are overanalyzed. A delayed reply becomes evidence. A short message becomes a signal. The mind fills the gaps with worst-case scenarios. Dark psychology explains that when information is missing, the brain defaults to threat interpretation. This is why anxiety grows even when nothing has actually changed. Mirroring also reinforces emotional isolation. Each person feels alone in their experience. Neither realizes the other is feeling the same confusion, the same longing, the same restraint. The tragedy is that both believe they are protecting themselves from being hurt, yet both are already hurting. Stoic wisdom warns against living reactively. A Stoic mind acts according to principle, not impulse. In mirrored behavior, there is no principle, only reaction. One step back triggers another. The connection becomes a series of echoes instead of a conversation. Another dark layer of this dynamic is the ego's role. Ego thrives on not being the one who gives in. It frames emotional openness as weakness. It rewards withdrawal with a false sense of superiority. I didn't chase. I stayed composed. But ego does not care about connection, it cares about self-image. And in love, ego is often the silent saboteur. Female psychology highlights that women are especially sensitive to emotional leadership. When no one leads, insecurity grows. She may appear calm on the surface, but internally she begins detaching as a survival mechanism. This detachment is not immediate loss of love, it is emotional numbing, a slow preparation for disappointment. For the man, prolonged mirroring can trigger emotional shutdown. He tells himself the connection isn't worth the risk. He intellectualizes his feelings. He distances himself mentally before doing so physically. This creates a dangerous illusion of moving on while unresolved attachment remains buried underneath. The most painful aspect of mirrored behavior is that it feels logical. It feels fair. I'm just matching their energy. This phrase has destroyed more connections than rejection ever could, because matching energy avoids responsibility. It avoids truth. It avoids the courage to say, "This matters to me." Stoicism teaches courage through honesty, not emotional chaos but emotional clarity, speaking truth without attachment to outcome. In mirrored behavior, truth is withheld. Outcome is obsessed over. Every action is designed to avoid loss instead of pursue meaning. Eventually, one of two things happens. Either one person breaks the pattern and risks vulnerability, or both slowly drift apart, believing it was mutual disinterest. Dark psychology calls this a self-fulfilling loss. Love ends not because it wasn't real, but because fear was never confronted. Mirrored behavior is not proof that love is weak. It is proof that love is powerful enough to scare both people. When two individuals are afraid to love each other but already do, they create symmetry as armor. But armor cannot touch, and love requires contact. The Stoic solution is not emotional exposure without control. It is controlled honesty, choosing to act according to values, not fear, choosing clarity over pride. Because the moment one person stops mirroring and starts leading, the illusion breaks. And often the other follows, relieved that someone finally had the courage to move first. Here is the truth, raw and unflinching. Love does not disappear simply because it is feared. Fear cannot erase what is already alive within you. The love you feel, silent, restrained, mirrored, is not a weakness. It is proof of connection so profound that your subconscious is terrified of its consequences. Stoic psychology teaches that fear is a natural reaction to potential loss, to uncertainty, and to vulnerability. It is not evil. It is not a condemnation. It is a signal. And in matters of the heart, fear reveals exactly how much you value the other person. The heavier the fear, the deeper the love hiding beneath it. Most people, however, mistake fear for resistance. They confuse the trembling of the soul with absence of emotion. They say, "I am not in love," when in reality they are paralyzed by the awareness of how much they care. Dark psychology explains that the mind will often erect barriers where the heart is most exposed. Silence, pride, distance, and self-restraint, all of these are tactics the psyche employs to survive emotionally. These tactics are not signs of absence, they are evidence of intensity. The stronger the bond, the more sophisticated the fear. Now recognize this: what you are experiencing is not rare. It is human. All true love carries the seeds of fear, and all deep connections demand courage. Stoicism calls courage the greatest virtue because it allows you to act in accordance with what is right, regardless of potential pain. Here, courage is not a matter of grand gestures or poetic declarations. It is simple but profound. It is the choice to be honest with yourself and the other person, even when the outcome is uncertain. When two people stop guarding and start leading with honesty, fear loses its grip. This is where many fail. They think bravery is easy. They believe that speaking one's truth guarantees safety. But the Stoic teaches otherwise. Bravery is valuable precisely because it is costly. In love, that cost is emotional vulnerability. It is the willingness to risk discomfort, rejection, or uncertainty for the sake of authenticity. Here is the paradox. The love that frightens you the most is the love that demands your courage, and the love that requires courage is precisely the love that matters most. Consider the subtle ways bravery manifests in this context. Perhaps it is allowing yourself to reach out first without waiting for a signal. Perhaps it is expressing admiration or affection without reservation, even if the response is delayed. Perhaps it is asking a question that matters. How do you feel about us? Even though you fear the answer. Each act of bravery breaks the cycle of mirrored restraint. It punctures the protective armor you have both built. And once that armor is punctured, connection floods through spaces that were previously stagnant. From the lens of female psychology, the response to courage is often instinctively positive. Women, like men, are highly attuned to emotional leadership. When one person chooses honesty over strategy, it signals safety. It signals that the other is willing to take responsibility for their feelings and for the direction of the relationship. This does not guarantee instant reciprocation because fear still exists, but it does create the space for attachment to move forward. The woman who has been testing, restraining, and mirroring can finally lower her guard without losing herself in the process. For men, the lesson is equally profound. Often conditioned to suppress emotion to avoid appearing vulnerable, the choice to act with courage represents a reclamation of true Stoic strength. Stoicism is not about repression. It is about mastery, mastery of self, yes, but mastery of impulse, pride, and fear. To express love honestly without needing an immediate return is a demonstration of self-command. It is strength cloaked in gentleness. It is not weakness, it is a higher form of power, one that resonates far beyond superficial displays of control. The greatest danger, however, is delay. Fear thrives in hesitation. Every moment spent calculating, waiting, or mirroring is a moment that strengthens the walls around your hearts. Fear is parasitic. The longer it is left unchallenged, the more entrenched it becomes. Love, in contrast, is expansive. Love asks for motion, not stasis. It requires expression. Stoicism teaches that the present moment is the only time you can act. Waiting for perfect timing is an illusion. There is only the now and the choice to act in accordance with virtue or to let fear dictate the rhythm of your life. Here is the brutal truth: unexpressed love deteriorates the self. It eats at confidence, disrupts clarity, and seeds unnecessary suffering. Both parties may feel trapped in a cycle where connection is evident but unspoken. Attraction is undeniable but forbidden by fear. This cycle creates an emotional limbo. You may fool yourself into thinking you are safe, but safety without truth is a cage, and love cannot thrive in a cage. Dark psychology shows us another layer. When love is feared, obsession can emerge. Thoughts become fixated on what is unsaid. Moments are replayed endlessly. Small gestures are magnified. You scrutinize every word, every pause, every look. It is a mental echo chamber where desire and fear feed each other. The more restrained you are, the more powerful this echo becomes. Eventually, it can overwhelm judgment, clarity, and even Stoic reasoning. This is why acting courageously is not just beneficial, it is essential. Acting with bravery releases energy from fear, transforming obsessive tension into authentic interaction. Stoic practice teaches reflection as a tool. Ask yourself, am I acting according to fear or according to truth? Fear will always find a reason to delay, a justification to withdraw, a narrative that keeps you safe. Truth, on the other hand, is liberating. Truth is the courage to acknowledge what is present, to name your feelings, and to act despite the uncertainty of outcome. By choosing truth, you honor the connection rather than the fear that shadows it. Now consider the final insight. Love rewards the brave, not the perfect. This is critical. Many believe that to earn love, one must perform flawlessly, strategize meticulously, and control every aspect of interaction. Dark psychology dismantles this myth. Love is not a calculation. It is a living, breathing force. It responds to authenticity and courage, not manipulation or perfection. The person who steps forward honestly, even if awkwardly, is far more likely to transform fear into intimacy than the person who holds back, no matter how polished they appear. The moment one person chooses bravery, the dynamic shifts. The mirrored retreat collapses, walls crumble, fear loses its authority. The other person, sensing the vulnerability and the courage, often reciprocates. Mirroring turns into reflection, not reaction. Restraint evolves into connection. Emotional energy that was previously blocked surges forward. This is the power of courage in love. It is not loud or theatrical. It is deliberate, controlled, and transformative. Bravery also teaches self-respect. When you act with courage, you honor your own feelings instead of denying them for the comfort of perceived safety. You show that your heart has value. Stoicism emphasizes internal virtue over external validation. In love, this principle is profoundly liberating. Acting with courage regardless of the immediate response ensures that you remain true to yourself, preserving dignity and integrity even if the outcome is uncertain. Finally, recognize this. Fear is temporary, love is enduring, and courage is the bridge. Fear may always exist, it may flare when vulnerability returns, but each act of bravery strengthens the bond, reinforces trust, and cultivates intimacy. Stoic psychology teaches resilience, the capacity to act in accordance with reason and virtue despite emotion. Dark psychology reminds us that emotional manipulation can occur in the absence of courage. It warns against the trap of letting fear dictate relational dynamics. Together, they reveal the path. Courage is the antidote to fear, honesty is the medicine for restraint, and action is the escape from mirrored paralysis. In the end, the choice is yours. Continue the cycle of fear and restraint, where love simmers quietly beneath the surface, always tantalizing, never fulfilled, or step into bravery. Step into truth, speak honestly. Express love deliberately, risk discomfort. Risk the unknown. Because the love you feel, that silent, restrained, mirrored love, is not a mistake. It is not accidental. It is a signal from your soul that connection is possible, that intimacy is real, and that two hearts have already intertwined, even if neither dared to admit it aloud. This is the ultimate lesson. The people who are afraid to love each other but already do are not broken. They are human. They are alive. They are witnesses to the paradox of fear and desire. And when courage finally enters the room, fear dissolves, walls crumble, hearts collide. Love, once silent and hidden, finally speaks, and it is worth every risk, every trembling moment, every ounce of bravery that brought it to life. Love rewards the brave, fear rewards inaction. The choice, as always, is yours.